Hello, my friends. How are you? Welcome to 30 Albums for 30 Years. I am your host, Jay Sweet. Today's record is The Temptations, the Temptin Temptations, released on the Motown label on November 1st of 1965, recorded between 1964 and 1965. Are you tempted to check this one out? You should be. It's a good one. The Temptin Temptations. Let's get into it. In 1964, the general public got to meet the Temptations with their debut album, even though they had been around for a while. In Season 1, Episode number 12, we look at the album Meet the Temptations, and I give a pretty detailed look into the Temptations' history, which is often tragic. But I will do a quick summary here. The Temptations are a vocal group from Detroit that has had 27 members at last count, and has lasted for 6 decades. The group was signed by Gordy, the owner of Motown Records, in 1961 for his Miracle label. After a few minor successes, founding member Al Bryant became frustrated with the lack of success within the Temptations, and he grew violent. He was fired and essentially drank himself to an early grave at the age of 36. Replacing Bryant was David Ruffin. And with Ruffin, the Classic Five lineup was solidified. That included David Ruffin, Otis Williams, Melvin Franklin, Paul Williams, and Eddie Kendricks. To try and secure a hit for the group, Gordy and his right-hand man, singer, songwriter, and producer Smokey Robinson worked on securing new material for the group, a group that desperately needed a major hit. In January 1964, they scored their first significant hit with the song The Way You Do the Things You Do. To showcase the group's earlier material, Gordy decided to take several of the group's releases with Bryant, along with The Way You Do the Things You Do, and released the group's first album, Meet the Temptations. By the end of 1964, the group released their first number one single, My Girl. Over the next few years, the Temptations became one of Motown's biggest hit makers with songs like Get Ready, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, I Know I'm Losing You, and I Wish It Would Rain. In 1965, the Temptations released 2 hit records. The first was The Temptations Sing Smokey for the Gordy label. The album was a compilation of songs written by Smokey Robinson. The record was a significant release because it included the hit My Girl. The Temptations Sing Smokey charted at number 35 on the U.S. Billboard pop charts and number 1 on the R&B charts. The second album is the album we are discussing today, The Temptin Temptations. The record included several of the group's hits from 1965 and a handful of singles that were not included on the Temptations' first album. The record went to number 11 on the US Billboard pop charts and number 1 on the R&B charts. As with all Motown releases from this time, the singers had the backing of one of the most outstanding rhythm sections, the Funk Brothers. As the Temptations continued to become more popular, singer David Ruffin got carried away with himself. He refused to travel with the rest of the group and reportedly demanded a private mink-lined limousine to transport himself and his then-girlfriend Tammy Terrell, another Motown artist. Ruffin also became adamant that the name of the group should be changed to David Ruffin and the Temptations. Fueled by cocaine and greed, Ruffin continued to be a menace. And after missing a performance and some other events, he was released from the group and replaced by Dennis Edwards in the summer of 1968. Ruffin started his solo career, and it started out pretty well. But in the 1970s, his fame began to fade, And fueled by cocaine and reported abuse charges against Tammy Terrell, things began to go pretty bad for David Ruffin. In 1982, he went to prison for tax evasion, and in 1991, at the age of 50, he died of an overdose. As for the remaining members of the original lineup, well, by late 1969, Paul Williams was struggling with the effects of sickle cell disease, and he began drinking heavily and falling into deep depressions. So a sixth Temptation named Richard Street was added as a stand-in replacement. Eddie Kendricks, who never felt comfortable with the firing of David Ruffin, also began fighting with the members over the band's new sound and direction, which leaned a little towards psychedelic rock. By 1970, things came to a head, and Eddie Kendricks walked off stage during a performance and was fired. Struggling with his disease, Paul Williams took his own life at the age of 34 in 1973. Throughout the 1970s until 1994, Otis Williams and Melvin Franklin managed to keep some form of the Temptations together by hiring, firing, replacing, and rehiring different Temptations. Throughout much of his time with the group, Melvin Franklin struggled with rheumatoid arthritis, which required continued use of cortisone shots. By 1994, he could no longer persevere with the group, and he died at the age of 52 in 1995, leaving Otis Williams as the only surviving original member. Amazingly, Otis Williams has kept rolling out Temptations even after Franklin's passing. In 1989, the Temptations were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In 1998, NBC aired the Temptations miniseries, which tries to make sense of the band's crazy history.